This is Dave, and I'm here with Ethan, and together we are Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 202-inch.
On this episode, we interview the Emmy-nominated editor of Weird the Al Yankovic Story, Jamie Kennedy.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
It's a podcast about Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Seriously, the whole podcast is about Weird
It's
Al.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
You don't have to listen, but we're glad you are.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Well, hello, Ethan. Welcome back from your 2-week-long business trip.
Hey, Dave. Well, thank you. Oh, it was quite a journey from Los Angeles all the way up to Seattle, but I got to see and meet a ton of our friends and past guests, so it was pretty nice.
Well, hopefully you didn't run into Lieutenant Dan as you were passing through Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
I told you never to speak his name again!
I'll take that as a no. Well, thanks to everyone for tuning in to the last episode where we spoke with comedy writer Rob Kuttner.
We wanted to remind everyone that if you buy a copy of his new book, Snot Goblins, Rob will send you the digital files to Runaway Brains, his scripted audio series where Al voices IBM's Watson, which you cannot get anywhere.
To take advantage of this offer for listeners of our podcast only, email intern Frank at 2000inch.com and let him know that you purchased the book.
And since Weird Al's reviews on the back cover, copies of this book belong in every Weird Al collection, as well as on the bookshelves of all of the weird kids in your life.
Well, Ethan, it looks like we've got a lot to get to, so let's check out what's happening in Weird Al-related news.
The 2023 New Yorker Festival is coming this October to various New York City venues, and one particular event caught our attention.
Weird Al is set to talk with New York Times bestselling author Andy Borowitz at Webster Hall on Saturday, October 7th.
General admission tickets sold out quickly. However, as of this recording, a few early entry tickets are still available. So if you're interested, you better act quickly.
Head on over to festival.newyorker.com for tickets and other details.
Dave and I plan to be there. We've already got our tickets, so if you're going to be there, let us know so we can say hi.
Weird Al appears in a new PSA for the Aneurysm and AVM Foundation, which just aired for the first time at a San Francisco Giants game.
According to their website, TAAF is dedicated to bettering the lives, support networks, and medical care of those affected by aneurysms and other types of vascular malformation of the brain.
TAAF has announced a virtual music telethon called Brain, Body, and Soul Fest, which will take place on October 7th, featuring brain injury survivors, celebrities, caregivers, and friends to spread the awareness for and about aneurysms and AVMs.
Head to brainbodyandsoulfest.com to join their mailing list so you can get information about this event as details are announced.
Weird Al joined past guests of the podcast, Portugal the Man, as a surprise guest on stage during their show at the Hollywood Bowl this past Sunday night.
Weird Al sang on their incredible song, Who's Gonna Stop Me?, reprising his role from the studio recording of the song.
Now, a few videos of this performance have popped up on social media, and by all accounts, the appearance with PTM was PSM. And that is pretty stinking majestic.
Now, with all these Emmy nominations, Weird Al has been popping up all over the place in a few different magazines and newspapers.
Devlin Wilder alerted us to the digital version of a LA Times article about the middle-aged dad jam band that features Weird Al, and Joe Jaffa alerted us to the physical version of that article, which just came out last weekend.
The LA Times magazine The Envelope from August 3rd features an article about Weird Al, and the May issue of Emmy magazine also features an article about Weird Al.
Keep your eyes peeled, as many periodicals recently have been featuring ads for Weird the Al Yankovic Story, including the July 14th issue of Hollywood Reporter, which congratulates the film for its 8 Emmy nominations.
Past guest of the podcast, Kevin McKee, let us know that Weird Al was the answer to 9 Down in the July 24th Wall Street Journal crossword puzzle.
The clue was, His Eat It is a parody of Michael Jackson's Beat It.
I guess the folks over at the Wall Street Journal never saw Weird the Al Yankovic Story.
Well, if you know of any other appearances in physical media, such as newspapers and magazines, please let us know.
We are very sad to report that Paul Reubens, the actor best known for portraying Pee Wee Herman, passed away at the age of 70 after a private bout of cancer.
Both Ethan and I had the honor to see Paul at Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas live-to-film concert experience back in October 2021.
At the show, Paul reprised his role of Locke from the film and performed Kidnap the Sandy Claus with both Danny Elfman and Weird Al on both of those nights.
Now, while Weird Al and Paul were friends, there are not too many other instances of collaboration over the years, which is a bummer.
Most recently, Paul's character Pee Wee Herman was portrayed in Weird the Al Yankovic Story by Jorma Taccone.
Weird Al and Pee Wee are two of the subjects of a viral photograph that features them attending a celebrity rock and roll benefit with Steve Van Zandt back in 1984.
The line Mecca Lecca Hi, Mecca Hiney Ho in Pretty Fly for a Rabbi is a direct reference to Jambi from Pee Wee's Playhouse.
And interestingly, the sets for both Pee Wee's Playhouse and the Weird Al Show were designed by Wayne White.
From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, Gill and Chill in Peace, Paul Reubens, a.k.a. Pee Wee Herman, the world of comedy has lost another great.
And unfortunately, there's even more sad news to share. John Gosling, a former keyboardist for the Kinks, has passed away.
John Gosling performed on the song Lola, which of course is the basis for Weird Al's parody, Yoda.
From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, Gill and Chill in Peace, John Gosling.
And now let's turn that frown upside down with the unveiling of the brand new Burrito ad.
Oh, do us that honor, Ethan.
This episode is brought to you in part by vegan burrito restaurant Burrito, home of the 2-pound double wrapped in a quesadilla burrito, and Wizard Burger in Albany, New York. Come on down to Burrito and Burrito and Wizard Burger for mouth-watering, loaded, dare I say, beefy vegan burgers. From Albany to Uranus, Burrito and Wizard Burger feed the hunger with out-of-this-world, plant-based, real food, always vegan style. Visit burritosquare.com and wizardburger.com to order ahead.
Wow, intern Frank really went all out rewriting that ad, huh?
All right, now it's time for what's happening in Suzanne Yankovic-related news.
Weird Al was in the news by way of his wife Suzanne last month. On her Instagram account, Suzanne posted a video of a precarious, crumbling portion of rock bluff above the Pacific Coast Highway.
The video spread and was eventually seen by city officials who quickly took action, bringing in a crane to remove the dangerous portion of rock.
In the media hustle to report on the story, friend of the podcast and past guest Sean James was even interviewed on the TV news about the situation.
Some people like to study rocks. Whatever.
And now let's check out what's happening in John Bermuda Schwartz related news.
Friday, August 18th is a very special day because it's the birthday of Weird Al's longtime drummer and friend of ours and the podcast, the great John Bermuda Schwartz.
From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, happy birthday, Bermuda. What a guy.
And how's this for a coincidence? August 18th is also Hawaiian Shirt Day.
So make sure this August 18th that you put on your best Hawaiian shirt to celebrate Bermuda's big day.
On behalf of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, we'd like to share the following message in advance of our interview with Weird the Al Yankovic Story editor Jamie Kennedy amid the current Hollywood strikes.
We have not been contacted by Roku or anyone requesting promotion of the film Weird the Al Yankovic Story of any kind. We want to state that while we are discussing the film, Weird the Al Yankovic Story, we are in no way promoting the film, nor showing support for film studios that do not support the writers and actors currently on strike.
The intention of this podcast is to create an entertaining archive of information about Weird Al and his career, life, and supporters for both entertainment and informational purposes. Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast supports the WGA and SAG and all creatives in the film industry and beyond.
With that said, Ethan, take it away.
Dave and I are absolutely thrilled to welcome the editor of Weird the Al Yankovic Story, who was just nominated for an Emmy Award. Please welcome to the podcast, Jamie Kennedy. How's it going, Jamie?
Woo, good. I can't believe I'm talking with members of Biker Bar, Dave and Ethan from Weird the Al Yankovic Story.
Yeah. By the way, where's our Emmy nomination? We did just as much as you did.
Hey, we need to make a bigger push, just like for stunts and for casting. We got to make a bigger push for best background acting in TV at the Emmys. Let's do it.
Absolutely right.
In a very specific genre, of course.
Right.
Yes.
We're thrilled to have you on. We've met you a few times in person. We obviously are big fans of your work. So just thank you again for coming on, and congratulations on the Emmy nomination. You were nominated in Outstanding Picture Editing for a Limited or Anthology Series or Movie for the 2023 Emmy Awards. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's bizarro world. I have to pinch myself every day. I can kind of hardly believe it. I felt very little fish, big pond, because there was the Ace Awards was crazy enough, but that was just TV movie, non-theatrical feature film. But for the Emmys, you add in the limited series, and I'm like, oh boy, that's a lot of competition from a lot of talented people.
And 8 Emmy nominations for the film is just, I mean, absolutely deserved. But I don't know if I ever believed that, the people would recognize the movie and love it the way that we did.
We definitely weren't sitting around when we were putting it together being like, and this is our Emmy moment. That guy getting eaten by the shredder in the factory, this is our time.
Well, I think we already alluded to it a little bit, but I think before we talk about the most important scene of the film in excruciating detail,
of course,
we should probably cover some of the less important scenes and maybe the process. And I guess going all the way back, were you already a fan of Weird Al before you got involved in working on the film?
Oh, yes, very much so. My fandom for Weird Al goes way back, probably to around like elementary school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, the first two albums that I was in the collective consciousness for was Poodle Hat and Running with Scissors. Those were my first two. I feel like it's hard to say like where I started, but like as any millennial, I feel like the Saga Begins was probably the first taste is free moment of Weird Al fandom. And since then, I've followed his career ever since. Went back into the arc, watched UHF in college. My partner and I, we've gone to every concert that he's had out here in Los Angeles since we've lived out here.
Oh,
like,
nice.
The No Strings tour, cool. The Vanity tour that just happened. Like we are just like, we've always been huge Weird Al fans. So truly, this was a dream come true. I have nothing left to achieve in life. This is the pinnacle.
How did you get involved in the film? Was it through a relationship with Eric Appel?
Yes. So I met Eric. He got brought on to write and direct Die Hard for Quibi once upon a time. I had just come off of a different Quibi show, and the same post-producer was working on Die Hard. And like literally one day she just called me up and was like, hey, I'm starting a new show. It starts Monday. You're starting with me. And I'm like, oh, great. Yeah. And she's like, I guess I should probably introduce you to the director. And I'm like, probably. That would be important. So like, Derek and I chatted on the phone. He agreed with the hiring, which I am grateful for. And it was about halfway through doing Die Hard that I learned about that he was the one responsible for the original Funny or Die sketch with Aaron Paul. Oh, wow. And like I've been saying, I have to get a lot better at IMDbing the people I work with, like earlier in the process, because it like came out while we were chatting, and I was like, oh my god, how did I not know this about you? That's one of my favorite YouTube videos of all time. It's brilliant. And he was like, well, Al and I have been trying to make it a feature for forever. And I was like, please call me if that happens. And he did, and I owe him everything for that.
That's incredible. Wow.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah.
Definitely a shoot your shot moment. But
right.
Like, it worked out. And since Roku, Colin, who was our like point person at Roku for the project, he came from Quibi. So actually, I had known him from my Die Hard days. So I think Roku was really great in trusting, Eric's decision in hiring me and bringing me on, because any bigger studio might have questioned the fact that I had solo edited a feature before.
Right.
But they were wonderful to trust who he was bringing on for his team, and I'm appreciative of that. And that's how we got here.
And obviously, I think it goes without saying, but anyone that Dave and I have met or dealt with from either Al's touring team or the film team, everyone's always like pretty stinking majestic and awesome. So it seems like it was a real dream team getting together to work on it.
It really was. Like, I mean, outside of this being the best movie I could have ever possibly worked on, just the people were so wonderful too. Like everyone was so nice and so working hard for the same creative goals. There was no drama, no toxicity. You couldn't ask for a better crew to work with.
That's so great to hear. And we do hear that quite often about everybody who works around Weird Al Yankovic and even, around Eric too. He's an incredibly nice guy. He always goes out of the way to make us feel special as well.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious if you could sort of walk through, when does the editor actually get involved in the film process? Is that early on, like day one, or are you not really involved until you actually start getting dailies?
Mostly my hyper involvement comes in when the dailies start coming in. So I am hired on, it's hard to say in a different, it's on a project to project basis. For this one in particular, okay. Eric had called me about it in November before they started, and so he that was the unofficial, I want you to work on this movie, but it wasn't deal memo and everything wasn't until probably a couple of weeks before they started shooting. That's when we started getting when the post team altogether starts getting hired. So when they got once they got the post producer, then they could officially bring me on. I could officially bring my AE on, Peter Dudgeon, who was also an additional editor on the film. There's sometimes conversation between the editors and sometimes editors can have some say in the vendors who are hired for a project. In this one in particular, it was kind of the vendors that they had, or the vendors that they had, so that I wasn't really part of that process. My major contributions came in basically the first day they started shooting.
And so were you on set for any of the filming?
Not on set. I wanted to, there were so many days that we really wanted to go out and visit, especially when they were out near Pasadena, but we were just so slammed with all the dailies that it just didn't work out. Plus with COVID compliancy, it's a lot hard. It was a lot harder to just kind of drop in on a set than so I unfortunately was just working out of my bedroom for that period of time, but I wish I could have gotten to set, because it looked like it was a lot of fun.
It was so cool.
Now to go back, did you start editing as soon as you get the stuff? For example, are you editing day one dailies on day two? Is that how this process works?
That is exactly how it works. Yes.
Wow.
So it was an 18-day shoot. They shoot day one. The dailies get sent off to our dailies house that evening, where they sync the picture, they make all of the Avid media files for me, and it's basically sent and delivered into my Avid by the next morning.
Wow.
And so the goal is always, it's a lofty goal, but you're always trying to kind of stay with picture as much as possible. So everything that was shot the day before, you're trying to edit the day after, and it's just staggered until the end of the shoot. 18 days. After that, I had 10 days to finish my editor's cut. So that means editing any scenes that were stragglers from behind, but then also putting everything together. Peter does the sound design. We do temp music. We look at everything. We watch the whole movie down, see how it's feeling, where it needs to be polished up before it goes off to Eric. And I have those 10 days to do it before it.
Wow.
That's what's called my editor's cut and is shipped off from there.
So what does the editing process look like? Are you just watching every take of a scene and then just picking the best scene and then, moving forward to the next one? Or how does that actually look?
Yeah. See, I go in a scene-by-scene basis. In Avid, the way I like working is we have this tool called, like, Script Sync, which is you bring in all of the footage and you line it up with the script for that particular scene, and you put marks for every line read on every take. So it's a very helpful process for when you have like a director in the room and they can be like, hey, can we see every reading of that line? And then you can literally just like click play, click play, click play.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's helpful for later on down the line. But while that process is happening, yes, I watch every take all the way through. I'm taking notes as I'm watching it. If there's something that stands out to me as like a particularly good performance, I will like put an in and out point and just throw it in a timeline. I'm not actively assembling the scene at that point. I'm just watching all the dailies. And then once I've like watched it all, seen what I've kind of pulled in terms of selects, that's when I start assembling the scene. So then I'll start going line by line and kind of comparing performance, comparing, what the overall tone of the scene is and which performances play into that the best. You're working on the shot composition because like there might be a really good performance, but it's in like the mega wide, and that's really only good for like an establishing shot. You want to be closer on people, and so like there's also kind of a rhythm to slowly building into the coverage of a scene. Start with mediums, you move in a little closer as you keep going. These are the things that you're kind of juggling as you're watching the scene and putting it all together. So I cut all that together, one scene. Usually I'll watch it down a couple of times and see if there's a little tweaks, but then I'll usually also like put it to the side and be like, I will look at you after a while and come back to you and see how I feel with fresh eyes. And during that period, that's when the AE, in this case Peter, is doing sound work for it. So putting in background sounds, specific sound design for, like if there's footsteps, if there's impacts or things like that. He's working on fleshing it out so that it will play, when we watch it back later, it'll play back kind of as close to how it would screen as possible.
And give us an idea, how much footage are you getting daily?
That is a great question that should have looked up at some point in my life. I feel like it was usually about like 5 hours of dailies a day.
Wow.
Yeah. But like you on top, if they're running 2 cameras, that's part of that. So like sometimes a take has 2 cameras, but you sync them together and you can watch them down at the same time. So you're watching the 2 different camera angles because they're grouped together.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it was like between like 3 and 5 hours a day. One of these days I'll be better at knowing that. I kind of just get in the flow and it gets done. And I would be terrible on The Price is Right.
So you were getting footage from the day before and editing it, sort of the next day. Now, meanwhile, Eric is still on set, directing for the next day. So how involved was Eric, and when did he get to finally see the edits that you made?
Yeah, for the most part, he didn't there wouldn't have been time for me to be like turning around scenes to him. Like if I were sending every scene that I assembled on a day-to-day basis to him and then like he would send back notes, we would have never gotten the movie done. So for the most part, there was kind of just trust where I was putting these scenes together during the process of the dailies. But there were a couple of like red flag moments that he put his hand up, and one of them actually we can talk about it is the Rocky Road scene, because that was the first big musical number that they had shot. And so he texted me that day that they wrapped, and he was like, hey, if you could like put a priority on getting this scene done as soon as possible, I just want to make sure we weren't missing anything in how it plays. And so that was kind of like, there were a couple scenes like that, there was the pool party, there was the action scenes that were a lot more intricate in terms of like people people or location or things, just to make sure we didn't miss anything. Those were the things I prioritized to make sure that I sent back to him. And the funny thing with the Rocky Road scene is I cut it all together. I felt really good about it. I was like, yeah, this is playing great. This is playing great. And Eric pointed out when he got it, he's like, I don't have a close-up of Dan singing the song. And he was absolutely right. Like, without that, you kind of have this removed feeling from the whole thing. The whole scene played like it was... It just felt too far away, and we weren't seeing Dan go through the changes in that scene with a close-up. And so that begged the question, well, how are we going to get a close-up? Because we were on a very limited timetable. We were in locations we couldn't go back to, with, like, groups of people we could not get again, probably.
We would have come back, don't worry.
Yeah, we would have flown back out.
Yeah, we could have put you just in the front row, like, just your two heads, and then, like, put... But because this is a testament to how great a director Eric is he saw a problem and he solved it. During the last couple of days of shooting, they were shooting at the Yankovic house, which is when they were shooting all of the Yun Al scenes. And toward the end of the day, they put up a curtain that looked kind of like the background of the Cobra Pit. And shot a close-up of Dan just in the living room of this house singing Rocky Road. And then they did the same thing for Amish Paradise as well, and it works. Like, because it's close, because the background's a little blurred out, because we're so close, they cut seamlessly together. And you're not able to tell that those were shot in two different locations on 2 different days. And it made all the difference, because once those close-ups were in, it was like suddenly the emotion of the scene worked.
Wow, that's incredible. Now I need to watch frame by frame, see if I can tell. That's amazing. Was there anything else that had to be reshot aside from those close-ups of Dan?
It was just those close-ups.
Wow.
We did have what was one there? We had wanted one close-up that we ultimately didn't end up getting. So I had done a different kind of mock-up in the polka party scene, where there was a moment where and Rocky Road. So I was juxtaposing in one of my first cuts of Rocky Road. I was juxtaposing Al being on stage at the Cobra Pit with the polka party scene, because I had noticed that the young actor who was playing teenage Al did this thing where he closed his eyes and breathed in right before he started playing on the accordion. And then Dan coincidentally did the same thing. So I tried cutting this thing where, it flashes back to the polka party in silence and they're both breathing in, and then it kind of worked. But we were talking about what it really needs is a close-up on the accordion of Dan playing, and we didn't have that. And so there was talks of maybe we could get a camera for a day and get that pickup, but as the process goes on, those are wish list items that you have early on, and then you start to love the movie for how it is.
Right.
And you're no, why are we putting in this much effort for something that mattered to us on one day, but as we've gone on, the movie doesn't need it. We didn't need the flashback. It was just as powerful to just stay with Dan in that moment. And so that was the one last thing. But otherwise, yeah, no other reshoots or pickups.
I mean, that's incredible for what a tight shoot it was.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
and that's what we were having kind of constant communication about, Eric and I, was just making sure he was if you think we're missing anything, he's if you see if we need transitions between scenes, let me know. And ultimately he got everything we needed.
Wow. That is so cool. Were there any lines that were particularly difficult for any of the actors where you saw 50 takes of the same line or anything like that?
I don't think anything difficult for people. I'm trying to think back. Everyone was really on their game, I think, because it was such a short turnaround, and there was no room for errors. People were on the script and they were great. There weren't a lot of bloopers or flubs in the movie. I will say, and this is not this is a compliment to Toby Huss because of how many options he gave, which made it great. The hardest scene, the scene that Eric and I retooled the most over the course of things was Toby's monologue in the beginning of the movie when he's talking about the guy who died at the factory that day. Because it's crazy in a movie with like 4 musical numbers and an action scene, like all these crazy things. The thing that we like nitpicked the most was this monologue, because it was, it was so funny, and every take Toby did was great, but it played too long in its original form. It was way too long of a monologue, and it was like killing the rhythm of the scene. So we cut basically like 20 different versions of the scene, with it like a little shorter, with like someone cutting him off, this take compared to this take, because he says this take a little bit quicker, and like let's try this take where he like puts a new inflection on this. Like literally every which way that you could cut that monologue we did, until finally we're like, I think we did it. I think that was it. But definitely felt like my Vietnam at times.
Right.
I'm like, no, not again. I can't.
So what are some other scenes that were, I guess like that, a difficult one to edit, whether based on the footage you had or based on just the, what you were trying to convey with it?
I think, everything else was, for me, so fun. like the action. So the diner fight scene had its own challenges, which is just like they only had the time to do like a couple of takes of each stunt, like maybe 2, usually 1. So like what we had was kind of what we had, and we had to make it work. So like that was a challenge. Just like we had it, and it works, as you can see. But like, with the limited resources we had for that scene, making it work was like walking a fine line. Yeah. But it looks great.
It does.
The other one, and I'm gonna shout out Peter Dudgeon again, who's an additional editor on the movie. He was responsible. So he had a couple of scenes in this movie that were like his baby. He did. I had him take all of the Pablo Escobar stuff.
Okay.
That was hit like from start to finish. He cut the dailies for that scene, and anytime we like got to that scene in the edit bay, I would swap out with him, and Eric would work with him on that one. And then he also did the dining room table scene with Mom is Fat. And that was another one. There was a lot of discussion about that. How subtly we could play that joke so people would get it, so that we're not laughing at Mom because she's fat. Like the joke has to, like we were like, the joke has to be the reference, like that people like it's the song. It's not because we're making fun of her. And so there was a lot of tweaking to that as well, to like try and sell the joke as much as possible without, because like it was like double the length. We did have the ham on whole wheat joke in there ever so briefly.
I noticed that there was ham on whole wheat on the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a moment when Toby was like, this sandwiches are great. What is this? Ham on whole wheat. So like, funny things, but like the point of that scene, like that was a joke in a scene where the bigger part of it was the connection between Al and his dad, finally having this relationship with his dad. And anytime we kind of got bogged down in that one joke set piece, it was taking away from what the actual purpose of the scene was. So there was a lot of tweaking there to like punch it up so that we could get the humor, but also move along to like what the actual point of the scene was.
How involved was Al in the editing process? Was he watching any of the cuts or giving notes?
Yes, he was. So, unfortunately, he never got to go be in the editing bay with us, but that was because the day we turned around Eric's director's cut was the day he started his tour.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So he was out. He was out on tour, but he watched every cut multiple times and gave notes. We would have Zooms. He was very, very involved in as producer, as co-writer. He was involved with making sure that every cut we had his stamp on it as well.
That's awesome. Were there any scenes that started off one way and just completely, once the editing process and in the final product, are just completely different?
Really, there were just trims. Like, there were things that we cut out for time. There were a couple scenes where we made some, like, bigger lifts within things. Oh, I do have an answer for this. The Oprah scene. Okay, I will backtrack and say the Oprah sequence, as scripted, it was a lot more static. It was because it was being modeled after like what an Oprah show in the 80s would look like, and it was a lot more. But it wasn't dynamic. This was the days before TMZ and Entertainment Tonight and those things.
Right.
So it's like interview, a graphic on screen. So there were like a handful of things that were just kind of playing. But again, as scripted, when you put them all out, it just kind of like drives the movie to a screeching halt because you're just going through these, and it's supposed to serve more as a transitional element because the point of that sequence is to show Al's rapid rise to fame. But it didn't feel very rapid because we were going through things. So there was like a little interview with the Scotti brothers that was peppered in there. There were a couple other a couple of things. But it became, we had to pace it up. So we took some artistic liberties and turned it a little more into more of the 90s style of entertainment interviewing, and added the music, the peppy music underneath, cut between things, cut out a lot of the interviews and just kind of cut between them, and put more B-roll and things to make it more of a driving force rather than what it was.
Cool.
Is there anything that you ended up cutting out that you wish had made it into the final cut of the film?
It's so funny because there were like little jokes here and there, and like there would be days where we would cut something and I would like leave a little sad that we cut it because I'd be like, no, like this is my favorite joke in the movie. And I'm so sad it's gone. And now you ask me and I'm like, what were they? So no, there was the one kind of big. The movie did not need this, but it does serve as a fun deleted scene that hopefully can be out there in the world someday. There was a little interlude when Al calls his mom right before the LSD sequence, where you also saw his dad at the dining room table, and it's a fun little miming scene where he doesn't want to talk to Al, and that was a fun one. But it was as we were like sitting around and being like, we need to cut some minutes out of this movie. It was like literally the cleanest lift we could possibly do. So we were like, okay, goodbye.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's funny what you get attached to and then what you kind of forget because you make the best version of the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I've heard Eric mention a few things, including the scene where Al is going to mail out his demo tape. In one version of the scene, he knocks over an old woman and her legs are flailing in the background. Are there other examples of things like that were just sort of edited around?
That was the big one. And that was a note from Roku or Funny or Die where they were like, okay, so we're supposed to like Al. And this is like approximately less than 10 minutes into the movie and he's like pushing an old lady out of the way. So, and we're like, we understand the note. That makes sense. So that was one that was an easy lift for us to do. It was a lot of little trims here and there. I think that was the most like VFX worthy, where we were like split screening out someone to not be there. But everything else was like little trims. Like the original cut, the editor's cut of the film, the first. Before we saw Al, it was like 15 or 18 minutes where it was, that's all the the young Al, the teen Al, that whole section was really long. And it was all good stuff. But, we had a firm belief that we're like, people are going to ask, where's Dan? We need to be able to see Dan.
Right.
And so our whole mantra with that first 15 minutes was just cutting out whatever we could that wasn't necessary, that wasn't serving the plot, so we could get through those sections as quickly as possible to get to kind of the crux of the movie. So it's little things you would never notice, but when you compare the editor's cut, which is everything as scripted, to what we have now, it makes a world of a difference.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was also wondering about, in the teaser trailer, there's a scene where Al says, anyone got an accordion, and 3 accordions are handed to him. Why was that part not used?
Yes, divisive. It was all about tone. So this was the biggest debate, I think, in the editing bay, because there were two different ways that was shot. One was does anyone have an accordion, and 3 accordions pop into frame, and then one was bring me my accordion. And Al really wanted the 3 accordions popping into frame because it's a funny joke.
Right.
And it is. Like, it's undeniably a funny joke. But Eric was making the case that, the humor of this movie and what we were going for tone-wise was always to keep things grounded in reality. Where if we played things as close to serious as possible and, like, really honored the biopic format, the humor was going to come in, like, kind of how straight everything was played. Mm-hmm. So as we were going through the movie and, like, looking at jokes, it was, like, the big question we were always asking was, like, yes, this is funny, but is this grounded enough, or is this too zany? Is this outside the world of the film we're trying to show? And that was the debate with the accordions, because if it is such a funny image, but like when you look at it in the world of the movie, you're like, okay, so there's a guy on the ground with an accordion, and there's 2 people off frame with accordions, and you're like, it kind of breaks the world that we've like worked so hard to set up. So it was a big debate back and forth, and the compromise basically wound up being keeping the accordions in the teaser trailer so they exist, and
cool.
So people know it exists and it's a funny joke, but in the movie,
right.
We keep it grounded.
Oh, that's awesome.
While Ethan and I were on set, we know we shot another extra take, or an extra scene, I guess, where one of the bikers came in at the end of the rocky road and said, there's an ice cream truck outside, and then all of us ran outside. Can you speak a little bit about
all these things I keep forgetting? Again, yeah.
That?
Yeah, no, yeah. That was another one of those, kind of the same thing as the accordion joke. Dot Marie Jones was the biker mama who you saw earlier saying, like, well, you better go get some ice cream. And that was, a little tag at the end of the scene as scripted, was her running in and saying, there's an ice cream truck out back. And that's where, how the whole biker bar. But just like the accordions thing, it's like, it's funny and it works, but we're also trying to, like, drive the plot along at that point. And like, every second is valuable in the overall runtime and, like, pacing of the movie. And it just became, rather than stopping down for a funny joke, it was more powerful to go from that look on Dan's face, it having, succeeded at the open mic night, right to backstage when Dr. Demento is coming in to meet him. It's just, It's kind of all about that forward momentum. I'm hoping one day these little deleted scenes can make their way into the world.
I hope so too. And now that we are on the most important scene in the film, I do have a lot of questions. But the first one, I remember a couple things that really stuck out to my day on set with Dave. One of them was, I don't know if this made it on film, but I got hit in the head with, like, a foam brick. Did that make it into the... Did you see that?
It was probably in a wide, but I'd have to go back and double check it. So was that during the skunk barf moment?
Yeah, it was throwing stuff at the stage.
Yeah. I mean, that shot is so much fun, and there were so many different takes of it. And it's one of those things where you can't linger on it too long, because you do see the little foam bricks, like, just bouncing off people's heads. So it looks like you were that person that I noticed.
There were a couple versions of the throwing stuff, and one of them I had a pair of tighty whities, and I threw it, and it landed directly on a boom mic. Did you see that at all?
I don't know if I saw that. Oh, that's amazing. Now, the other thing we noticed in that one is there's a character in the movie who really finds his way to a bunch of different places, because the guy who is out in the establishing shot of the Cobra Pit, there is a guy beating up someone. So as you're like zooming in slowly on the open mic night, there's a guy who's beating up someone. That's the same guy who gets on the stage after Skunk Barf makes everyone boo.
Right.
So he got from the outside to the inside really fast. And he's also one of the, like, cooks at the diner. He's the one who gets his head griddled on on the Panini press. So he secret in universe of Weird Al Yankovic. This poor guy is having like a real rough run of hit.
Yeah, that was Thomas Forbes Johnson, and we know that because he was standing right behind us, and so we were chatting with him between takes, and he was really awesome. We really enjoyed.
That's awesome.
Working with him.
You should get him on the podcast.
Yeah.
I would love to know.
Yeah,
Because I feel like does he work
yeah.
in stunts?
stunts and acting. He was actually in The Lost City with Daniel.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how they met. They met on the set of The Lost City, and I guess Daniel had somehow brought him in when they knew they needed stunts for Weird the Al Yankovic Story. That's what he was telling us on the set.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was cool, and I do wish there was more of that scene. I understand not wanting to show him too much, but I loved watching them like get the crap beaten out of them, and Jonah
It's
hiding
great.
behind
And like,
the...
yeah, I was just gonna say Jonah hiding behind the symbol.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, everyone killed it.
So if there was what do they say, the Yankovic cut or the Yankovic edit, do you think that we'd get to see some of those things that we're talking about today?
Great question. I feel like I haven't been in any discussions about those kind of things, but I feel like there's different ways you could do it. You could either, just release the fuller scenes. Again, not that there were any like big scenes, but you could do like extended version of scenes where we cut out bigger parts, like that scene at the dinner table.
Yeah.
You could do the Paul Feig like bridesmaids thing and just like basically release an alternative cut of the movie that like includes all of the fat and all the weird stuff, like replace the accordion joke, like you call it the weird joke, the weird cut.
Yeah.
I don't know in what form or if that will ever happen, but it'd be really cool.
I would love to see it. That would be so cool.
I know, yeah. How was it? Like, I mean, I'm sure you just wish you could like see all of the dailies from that day, because that must have been a wild day on set.
Well, I mean, we were there. We didn't expect that we would even be seen in the film. We were just happy to be there. And then, when the teaser trailer dropped, we were like, hey, that's us. You can see us. And then I ran into you, Jamie, at the Weird Al show at the Wiltern in LA, and you're like, yes. I've seen your face a lot. So I'm like, oh, wow. So I must have made it in the movie.
Yeah, prime real estate.
So was there ever a version of the scene where you didn't see Dave and I?
No, never.
Good.
That was non-negotiable.
Good.
Like, come on, you guys are the definitive voices on Weird Al. We needed to have you visible. But it was great that we got the extreme close up. That's a perfect reaction for that moment that we needed.
That shot of Dave is so iconic. I love that so much.
It's so great.
Yeah,
the slightly slack-jawed but not too slack-jawed. Like, you really nailed it.
Oh, thank you.
That look deserves an Emmy, Dave.
Agreed.
I think so. I'm waiting.
So, one thing that Al said to me on set, I think he was mainly joking, but he did. He said that he would have expected me to know the lyrics to "I Love Rocky Road," and he said in the camera, it didn't look like I knew the lyrics. Do you have any memory of seeing me correctly mouthing the lyrics to "I Love Rocky Road"?
What if I can definitely say yes, just for street cred of it.
Okay, good.
No, I think Patton probably had the most trouble lip syncing to Rocky Road, because the problem was because when they were doing his close up, they weren't playing the music for it, so he was just kind of doing it, if I recall correctly. And that's really hard. It's really hard to lip sync because he couldn't sing it. He had to be lip syncing it, but there was no music to lip sync, so that's really hard to do.
Right.
I could do that though. I'm sure I could do it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need the Yankovic cut with Ethan playing the part of that Patton.
Yes.
There you go. Heckler, which was also supposed to be Aaron Paul, until the day before, I think.
Right. He tested positive for COVID.
Tested positive for
yeah,
COVID. Yeah. And then, as you know, Patton was supposed to be Dr. Mento, but he broke his leg. Lots of things. Lots of like chain of everything.
Yeah. All for that one scene, too.
Yeah.
All for that one scene. Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, Jamie, we've met you at the world premiere of Weird the Al Yankovic Story at the Toronto International Film Festival. What was your experience seeing it with an actual audience for the first time?
Oh my God, it was a dream come true. I was like emailing everyone. I'm like, I will pay my own way to TIFF. Please, can someone secure me a ticket for this movie? and Roku was very good about it. I was sad I didn't get to bring my partner with me, but I, flew up to Toronto by myself, got a little Airbnb half hour outside of Toronto, put a lot of effort into getting a little Hawaiian print pantsuit situation that I could wear to the red carpet.
Yeah.
We also, my partner and I made stickers that we handed out up at TIFF. Did you guys get your hands on those?
Oh, we certainly did. Yeah, we love them.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
So we were I was so excited about I thought I couldn't even believe that we were all we got into TIFF. So I made these little stickers that had a little Hawaiian print on it and the weird font, and it said "Keep TIFF Weird," the Al Yankovic Story. And I made like 500 copies of these stickers, and I brought them with me to the premiere and just kind of like handed them out, left them at the concession stand, gave them to anyone who was interested in one. I went through the audience and was just like handing them out, and they're like, "Oh, do you work for Roku?" And I'm like, "Not technically." Not anymore. I just cut the movie. Don't worry. But it was incredible because we didn't do any test screenings of the movie. We didn't have like a friends and family screening.
Oh,
we
wow.
didn't have any test screenings. It was the most people we showed at any given point in time is Eric would bring in like 6 friends or like 6 people he'd worked, like trusted people that he's worked with before, and we'd do a screening for them. But we would never have more than like 10 people in a room watching the movie at any point in time. So then for it to play up there with like the biggest audience I could with a mezzanine,
Right.
Right.
and it was so amazing and powerful to like just hear a whole audience laugh at the jokes that we had cut. Like it was
Right.
something else. Like, and so after that, I was like, I need to get myself to every screening of this that I can. And I got to a lot of them because I did TIFF, I did Beyond Fest, I did, there was an FYC screening I went to.
Oh, cool.
And I went to I managed to get tickets to the Draft House premiere out here in LA.
Cool.
Was logged on when they released the tickets, and I was just we had 2 computers and we were refreshing, and I managed to get tickets.
Oh, that's amazing.
No one has ever worked harder.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, that experience at that screening is unparalleled to any sort of movie screening I've ever seen in my life. It was just, I mean, I was so excited to see the movie. I was so excited to see if Dave and I made it into the movie, but
Right, because you didn't know at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had we assumed, but we didn't know for sure. And we're like, oh, well, maybe, once the DVD comes out, we can pause it and we can see ourselves. But, we didn't need to, as we found out. It was just such a great experience. And the movie it's so funny. It's so well edited. Really, that's the best part of the movie is the editing. And
Thank you. Eric makes my job very easy, I will say that much. Eric has such an incredible vision. He's one of the most talented directors I've ever worked with because he just knows what he needs to get, and he knows like what the movie is supposed to look like. And at that point, like we're just kind of like playing then, like making like it's so easy to make his vision what it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I saw you at the Wiltern for Weird Al's The Unfortunate Return of the Ridiculously Self-Indulgent Ill-Advised Vanity Tour, you were wearing a skunk barf t-shirt. And
I was.
That is really cool. And where can Dave and I get skunk barf t-shirts?
You have to bug Eric.
Okay.
That was so we didn't have like again, we're down and dirty film set, but Eric went out of his way to make those shirts for the whole crew.
How cool.
And so that was like his gift, his kind of wrap gift to the whole crew. And I wear it with pride. So yes, you should bug him about it to see if he has any extras.
Well, if Eric's listening, our bugs are coming.
You should leak some on eBay just to get some extra scratch.
Ooh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Since no one's working right now, that might be a good source of secondary income.
Now, Jamie, were you involved in editing the teaser trailer and the trailer?
I was not. That was the promo people at Roku. But there's nothing more exciting to me than when like the trailer gets released, because it's kind of the first like, oh, the world is seeing it, and it's kind of the things that we've cut together, but snappier and cooler. We did see the teaser and the trailer before they got released, and Eric did like a couple of passes of notes with the Roku promo people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that was all them.
So do they take your like editor's cut and work from that, or are they working from the same dailies that you worked on?
They're working from the same dailies, so they can kind of pull. Sometimes they need to pull different takes, as the accordion is evidenced by, or like if they need to hang on a shot longer or go to like a reaction that they don't have. That's what they have the dailies for. But they are pulling from whatever like the most recent cut they've received is, just as like a guide track for them to work through.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Were you kind of nervous that they would screw it up?
Oh yes. Oh, of course we were. Oh, very much so. But it looked great.
Yeah. So it wasn't even you who put us in the trailer and the teaser.
No, that was other people.
Wow.
So that's how
okay.
that's how much of an impact you had.
Wow, it's a testament to our acting abilities.
Exactly.
Now, I guess back to the subject of things that were cut from the film. My understanding was there was a line or a part of the scene where Al as Tony is on the phone with Dan as Al, talking about the Michael Jackson "Eat It, Beat It," that had to be cut from the Michael Jackson's family or something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, but I don't think I can speak on it specifically.
Okay.
I'll just say there was a line that, they requested we take out, and we did.
I guess I'm curious. So who got to watch the movie and make those kind of requests? Who saw it?
I don't know, actually. At that point, this was like when this happened. It was like 2 weeks before TIFF, so we were locked completely. And so at some point, someone else, I don't know what the process is for like once a movie gets locked, where it gets sent off to, and who sees things and who comments on things. But yeah, someone had seen it, and so we did have to go back in and unlock it in order to fix that.
And was that the only change that happened post-lock?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
That was the only change post-lock, post-mix.
Wow, okay. So even after seeing it at TIFF and getting reviews, there was nothing changed.
Nope. Queen didn't come after us.
Or the Queen.
We were safe. Or the Queen, which was our TIFF premiere was the day she died.
Yes.
Yeah, can you speak to this?
In Canada too. Yeah.
Right.
The death curse? Are you about to ask about the death curse?
Yeah, can you speak to the death curse?
Yes. I am a firm believer that the death curse is real. I mean, it's certainly not just because we're doing a movie about, people from the 80s and, time is a cruel mistress that takes us all at some point in time. It's much more fun to say it's a death curse.
Oh, yes.
Because yeah, since we came out, I have to do the full rundown. Since the movie has premiered, the Queen of England has died. And she's in it.
Yep.
Coolio has died.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gallagher has died.
Yep.
Yes.
We just lost Pee Wee Herman.
Yep.
Or Paul Rubens. Am I missing who else? Who else is?
I think those are the ones that are on my list.
I think those are the ones. But still, that's a hefty number.
It is.
Oh yeah.
Not to get too dark, but to put you on the spot, Jamie, do you want to call who the next victim of the curse will be?
Oh jeez.
The next victim of the curse.
Oh boy.
And this is not admissible in court.
Oh, you know what? You know who it's gonna be? It's gonna be that grandmother that Al pushed out of the way.
Complications from being pushed by Weird Al Yankovic.
Exactly. Or at least 6 people in the factory.
Right.
In the time that we've recorded this interview.
Now, I'm really curious about, so you are editing the film, you have the raw cut, and my understanding is Daniel was actually singing during these parts where Al's voice is put in. What can you tell us about that?
He's great, yeah. Dan put, he's a great singer, which I've known for forever because I'm a big Broadway fan. So I followed him in his theater days as well. And, you know, there's a certain performance that is enhanced in a movie like this. You can either, you know, lip sync and like not actually sing. But if you do that, you know, you're not going to get like what your neck is doing, what your breathing can look like. It can sometimes feel out of sync. So you get a much better performance when you are actually singing along rather than just lip syncing. And so Dan gave it his all to every performance. I was especially blown away because there was a chunk of like 2 or 3 days where they shot back to back to back. I think it was like Rocky Road, followed by another one rides the bus, followed by Amish Paradise. And I'm like, this is so many songs. I don't know how he had a voice after all that, because he's not just singing, he is singing. And I feel like you could release a whole cut with Dan's voice instead, but why do that when we have Al?
Well, so when he's singing, was he singing as Al, doing an impression, or was he singing as Dan, you know, with a British accent?
He was singing like American. He was singing like his Al.
Okay.
Like, I don't think he was necessarily doing, he wasn't doing like an impression of how Al sings, but he was singing like his Al would sing.
Oh, interesting.
If that makes any sense.
I would love to hear those. I would really love to hear those.
I also wish they found out that Eric went to karaoke with Dan and Evan and some other folks after they wrapped. This is a story I heard. And like Evan sang Madonna there, and apparently like she's an incredible singer as well. And then we were all like, why didn't we get her to sing something for the movie? And like there was a moment during the Al and Madonna love scene when like that big swooping amazing score that happens that Zach and Leo composed. There was a brief moment where like, because I had originally cut that scene to Like a Virgin, where I just blatantly brought in Madonna, and I'm like, we can't afford this, but it works for this. And so we flirted for a while with the idea of like, oh, could we afford it if like we asked Evan to like re-record it?
Oh, wow.
Like maybe we could get that. And again, it was one of those things like we talked about and we got excited about, but then like it just got like too complicated, and then they wrote that score and we're like, that's it. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
This is better. This is way funnier.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so cool. Are there any official talks of a sequel to Weird the Al Yankovic Story?
Oh, from your mouth to recording God's ears, Hollywood's ears. Not that I know of yet, but I would drop everything in the moment to continue the story of Al, because he's not dead; he's just undead.
That's right.
It's a zombie. So now that we covered the very important Rocky Road scene, I wanted to ask you about some of the other scenes that I've heard about editing. For example, when we were talking to Lin-Manuel Miranda, who of course played the doctor in the movie, he had mentioned that he had sort of improvised a few of his lines.
Yes.
Do you remember that? And how did you settle on the one that ended up in the film?
I need some Gosners.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the one that worked the best. What was the other? I have to think back on. There were a couple he threw out.
I have to imagine they're all lines from like a.
They were all lines
yeah.
from the song. Yeah,
Okay.
he was. Yeah, he's writing
Like
fast.
a
He's
surgeon,
like,
yeah.
that's what it was. Thank you. He's writing. He's like, this patient is writing fast, instead of this patient is fading fast. Yeah, so he was throwing out different lines from the song, but "Give Me All Your Gosners" was definitely the one that fit best into the
Yeah.
into the moment.
Oh, it's such a great part. I love that.
Yeah, and that's such a great nod to Weird Al fans as well. I know that there's the Gosners is often misheard as Gosners, which of course is just a made up word, but it's
Give me all your
it
Gosners.
seems to be pretty popular.
It was so funny when they announced, like, you know, obviously I knew the movie was happening because I was working on it, but they announced it officially just like a couple of weeks before they started shooting, and as soon as the Deadline article came out, I like texted it to Eric and I was like, so has Lynn reached out to Al already about being in the movie? And he's like, yes.
Awesome.
I'm like, I knew it. I knew he was going to drop everything to be in this.
That's so cool. We had a lot going on too, Jamie. We had to drop a whole lot.
I know. I mean, you did have to fly out. That's not nothing.
That's true.
You would gladly do it again. But I wanted to also ask you a little bit about what sort of editing went into the LSD trip that Al went on after eating the tainted nachos.
Yeah, a lot of just kind of like pre-visualization had to go into that one because, you know, the shots that I received were all like actors on green screen. And when you're, you know, my editor's cut is not the finished cut of a movie, obviously, but you do want to make it look and sound as close to finish as possible because you want to try and take out as many distractions as possible so that you can focus on the important things: performance, pacing, tone, story, all of those things. So it's always a goal of mine to make sure that like people are not getting hung up on sound being off or like things looking bad. So I always want it to look as good as possible. So if I were to just put in, you know, the green screen performances back to back to back, that doesn't really sell what we're trying to do. So I spent like a whole night pulling in I was like ripping references of like hell landscape from YouTube and like clouds. I was just like building the backgrounds myself. And then there was a moment, like, you know, in the script it says the camera zooms in on the shredder, and I'm like, I feel like I can picture in my head what that's supposed to look like. And then it like hit me. I'm like, yes, it's that shot from Toy Story 3 with the furnace.
Yes.
And so I like pulled it from YouTube and like cut it in but like put a shredder on top of it and like rotoed it and like put Dan in front of it. So like it all looks really janky, but like it was me trying to do as best proof of concept as I could. Because, you know, like that's the starting point we have to work with. And it was one of the first scenes that we had to lock because, you know, so much CGI work had to be done by our VFX person Bruce that like, and we didn't have a lot of time, so we had to like basically lock that scene for timing pretty early on in the process so he could get started building those things. The other funny thing with that scene is I when I was putting it together originally, I had like such a like egotistical moment where I'm like, oh man, I have an idea for a song in this scene and I'm gonna look so impressive because it's a little bit of a deep cut, and I had cut in the opening to Nature Trail to Hell.
Oh.
And I'm like, it works so well, the instrumental is perfect. And I sent it and Eric's like, it does work well, but I actually always kind of viewed this moment as like a duel of the fates kind of thing. And I'm like, that makes sense. Yep, I get it, you're right, that does work better. But that was my little like like Al
I love
deep
that.
cut.
I love that.
That's great.
Have you gone back and watched the editor's cut since the film was locked?
I have not, because I don't have it. I should have been secret and output it for myself. But it's so much harder in you know, back in the days where we were working in offices and not remotely, it was a lot easier to like, you know, sneak a hard drive and do a little output and throw it on there and take it home with you. But it's a lot harder to do that now. But God, I would love to watch it again and probably, be like, oh wow, we came so much further. This is the final cut is so much better than this.
So who would have that? Does Roku have that?
Just Roku.
Okay.
Yeah, it's archived on the archive. At the end of the show, we take basically everything that was on the the backup hard drives, and you put it on one hard drive, and they archive it away, and it's there. So it's safe, it's sound, it's somewhere else.
So we need to put a heist together, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Jamie, this has been absolutely incredible getting to talk to you all about working on Weird the Al Yankovic Story, your incredible Emmy nomination, and we can follow your adventures on Instagram by following you at pseudocinema, and we can check out your website, which is jamie-kennedy.com.
Yep. Not the other one.
Not the other one. I bet the other one's jealous that you're getting Emmy nominations.
That's truly my partner's only goal in life is for me to get one notch above him on IMDb. One day it may happen.
Oh, I love it.
Once again, we'd love to thank Jamie for joining us and making sure we had such high visibility in Weird the Al Yankovic Story.
You can check out Jamie on her website, jamie-kennedy.com, and at pseudocinema on Instagram, as well as X, the social media network formerly known as Twitter.
Ooh, that sound means that we have a call on the 347 Spatula Hotline, the official hotline of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
All right, intern Frank, let's hear it.
Hey, David Ethan, this is your old pal, Sheepdog David Grant, a.k.a. MC Chogskin, a.k.a. Bird, and I am just, a.k.a. wolfandwool.com, and I am just calling to wish you a very happy 203rd episode, unless you play this on the 202nd or 204th episode, in which case, I'm wishing you a happy one of those. Okay, bye-bye!
Aw, thank you, David. So nice to hear from you, and thank you for the well wishes.
Well, sounds like we've got another call on the 347 Spatula Hotline. All right, Frank, let's hear this one.
Hi, Dave. It's Jackson. I'm just calling to remind Ethan about the meat raffle at Trouble's number 2 restaurant and bar. Hope all is well.
Hey, thanks for the reminder, Jackson. Ethan, what are you doing tonight at 6 p.m. Twine Ball time?
I don't know, but I'm definitely not going to a meat raffle.
Aw, okay. Well, maybe next Wednesday.
Only if we get a reminder.
This episode is brought to you in part by Discover Darwin, promoting tourism in Darwin, Minnesota. Not only is historic Darwin, Minnesota, beautiful, it's also Twine Ball Day.
In just a few short days, it will be the second Saturday in August, and you know what that means.
It's Twine Ball Day! Yay!
Yay! That's right! This Saturday, August 12th, is the 32nd annual Darwin Twine Ball celebration!
All right, Ethan, which sanctioned event are you most excited for?
Well, the sanctioned event that I'm definitely interested in the most is the Grand Parade. I hear that this year it features local royalty, area floats, and antique cars, tractors, horses, and much, much more.
Antique horses? Neat!
I know, right? Okay, well, which sanctioned event are you most excited for?
Oh, the sanctioned event that I'm most excited for, I've got to go with the event that St. John's Youth Group is putting on from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. Twine Ball time.
Oh, why is that?
Well, because it has walking tacos and snow cones in the park.
Whoa! I've never seen a walking snow cone before.
Yeah, me either.
I've seen a bunch of walking tacos, though.
Yeah, of course, we all have.
So visit Darwin, Minnesota on your next sanctioned expedition. Discover Darwin, more than just the twine ball. And after you visit Darwin, Minnesota, be sure to attempt to visit discoverdarwin.biz.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast is brought to you absolutely free thanks to our incredible sponsors, Burrito, Wizard Burger, Jackson Scoggins, and Discover Darwin. Our podcast is also supported by everyone in our Patreon family, with special thanks to our amazing close personal friend level Patreon supporters, Ron, Scott, UH Jeff, Matt, Kenneth, Gus and Alicia, Allison, Adriana, Ajax, Jake, Zeb, Zach, Dana B, Blair, Kev, Javier, and also thanks to Spencer and everyone else in our pretty stinking majestic Patreon family.
If you enjoy our family-friendly Weird Al podcast, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/2000inch. There's awesome benefits like getting your name on the podcast, your own private RSS feed, which gives you early access to each and every bonus episode, and the self-satisfaction of doing something important with your otherwise pitiful, meaningless, worthless, stinky existence.
And now would be a really good time to join if you have not joined already, because you'll be the very first to hear each and every one of our remaining brand new, ridiculously self-indulgent bonus episodes the very instant that they drop. And don't forget to check out our official merchandise shop over at shop.2000inch.com. All proceeds from purchases go directly towards supporting our fine podcast.
We love hearing from our listeners and other Weird Al fans, so be sure to join our Facebook community at group.2000inch.com and visit our Discord server for even more riveting Weird Al and Red Rum Tagootie related conversations. You can find both of them linked on our website, as well as information about past episodes and guests over at weirdalpodcast.com or 2000inch.com.
And while you are there, make sure you click on Ridiculously Self-Indulgent bonus episodes and follow along with our adventures on tour, and click on Black and White and Weird All Over bonus episodes for our special series where author John Bermuda Schwartz walks us through his first book, page by page and picture by picture.
Keep up on new episodes, podcast news, and events by following at 2000inch on Facebook, X, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. Not only does subscribing help the podcast, you can use your ESP to learn to play guitar.
Plus, we also love when we receive voicemail via our official patent-pending 27-hour-a-day podcast hotline, 347-SPATULA, as seen in the Illustrated Al. That number is 347-772-8852. Put it in your phone and give it a call, and you might even hear your message in a future episode.
Thank you once again to our guest, Jamie Kennedy, for joining us this episode. We'd also like to thank Joe Jaffa, Devlin Wilder, Kevin McKee, David Grant, Jackson Scoggins, Dan Butts, and thank you to the Grammy Award-winning Jim Kimo West for our incredible podcast theme song. Thank you to the Emmy-nominated Weird Al Yankovic, as this podcast probably would not exist without him. And a big thanks to all of you, our loyal listeners, subscribers, Patreon supporters and sponsors, and everyone else who makes our podcast possible.
Thank you for tuning in to Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast. And until next time, remember to gill and chill, keep listening to Weird Al, and stay cheesy.
You know, if I had a chance to edit Weird the Al Yankovic Story, I'd make a lot of changes.
Oh, now really? I thought we both agreed that this film was absolutely 100% perfect.
Well, yes, but I mean, I think the polka party scene could have used some tough bikers.
Yeah, that's true. I'll agree with that edit.
In the music awards, they definitely could use some tough bikers in that audience.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And during all the concert sequences, I mean, tough bikers would have been really great there.
Yeah, in the front row, of course.
And the most obvious change would be...
Oh, let me guess. More tough bikers.
Absolutely! I would have edited them into the Madonna Al lovemaking sequence.
Oh, really? Where would you have put them?
Well, I'd rather not say. This is a family-friendly podcast.
That was Dave Nathan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 202-inch.
Release the 2000-inch cut!
You guys are the definitive voices on Weird Al. We needed to have you visible.